And here we go again with another Pursuit of Perfect System live video. And obviously, thank you very much for joining us live, or maybe joining us after the event. And I thought while we wait for more people to join the video, we could have a quick chat about the Euros, because obviously the Euros is going on and I wish I had more free time to watch more of the games. But how do you feel about England's chances tomorrow against Germany? It should be an interesting one, right? It should be a fun and interesting experience. And I remember as a kid always watching, big football events. I'm not a massive football fan, but I always used to watch, the big football tournaments and events. And it always used to be great as an English supporter because the team always seemed to do really well to the point they came unstuck. And then you would have this massive emotional roller coaster that you go through. So if anybody's watching this from Germany, you've probably never experienced that because Germany always seem to do so well in major tournaments. But trust me, as an Englishman, we really go through it from an emotional point of view. So yeah, tomorrow should be a very, interesting one. Let me just quickly sort this out. Right then, so quickly before we get going on the video, just a few shameless plugs. I just want to remind you all that if you enjoy this video, please make sure you hit the like button, because that obviously helps, helps more people find the channel, more people find the videos, and helps Pursuit Perfect System grow, which is always good. Also, if you haven't visited it recently, my website, pursuitofperfectsystem.com. Go and visit the website. Let me know what you think of the content on there. Obviously, I'll get slightly different reviews that go on there and a few other bits and pieces. Lots of industry news and stuff goes on there. Also, a quick plug for my direct live calibration service or business, which is getting really busy actually, which is fantastic. More people are finding me, which is partly I think because of this and partly because of the direct live calibration website, which is exactly that, all the W's, directlivecalibration.com. And I keep a list or a record of there of all the work that I do, so you can get some idea of the calibrations that I'm doing, some of the systems that I'm working on. And what's great about that is it's not all kind of huge mega money systems. It's a real mixture of very real world home cinema and hi-fi systems that I'm working on. And I'm getting to meet a lot of you as well, so that's fantastic. Another quick plug for Pursuit of Perfect System on Instagram and Facebook. If you're not following me, why not? Get over there and obviously hit the like button and the follow button on those two, if you don't mind, please. And while we're quickly talking about that, if you've sent me any messages on Facebook or Instagram messaging system, I sometimes just miss them. It's not on purpose. They come through. I think, yeah, I'll reply to that and I kind of forget, and I kind of get lost in those systems. So the best way to contact me if you want to discuss anything is through email, and you'll find the email address. It should be on the website. If not, it should be through the YouTube system. If not, it's terryellis@pursuitofperfectsystem.com. Nice and easy. And lastly, one more thing. Two more things actually. One is Patreon. If you're interested in getting kind of one-on-one support or one-on-one help, or some of the other Patreon benefits like early access to the videos that I create, videos that are ad-free, and some other bits and pieces as well, maybe consider supporting Pursuit of Perfect System through the Patreon system. And the last thing I was going to say is, again, this has been confused a few times, that I am not 100% not a hi-fi dealer. I do not sell any products at all. Obviously I do sell myself as a calibration or calibrator for Direct Live, but I'm a completely independent reviewer, not tied to anyone or anything. And I think sometimes people have mistook that through some of the feedback. So I'm totally independent. Okay, then hopefully everyone is joining us who's going to join us, which I've lost the page. I can't even tell. So yeah, we're doing okay. We're doing okay. Let's get the comments back up. Hello, everyone who's joining us. Hello. Right then, so let's make a start with the video. And this is me, obviously Terry Ellis. Let's get that up and out of the way. Hello. Right, just get my notes back up. Right, so the purpose of doing this live video in the main is to get some interaction between you. So please do get involved in the comment section, ask questions, etc. But really it was just to maybe fill in a few gaps between, I suppose, all the 10 reviews that I did for the 10 different speakers of the recent group test, and then to talk to you a little bit more about the final video, the conclusion video, because that is a really interesting one, because doing that type of video for 10 different speakers was actually much tougher than you might imagine, because there's so much information there that I had to try and cut down to try and keep the video at a more palatable time length. So the video is actually 27 minutes long, but it could have easily been 47 minutes long. I was cutting more and more and more out as the kind of editing process went along. But what I thought I would try and do is answer some of the main questions that have been raised, because there's been a few common questions that keep coming up for that video, and some of them are kind of to be expected. And the first one, and the main question that keeps being asked, is the why not question. Why did I not include this speaker? Why did I not include that speaker? Why did I miss out a speaker or two? And obviously people always make suggestions about, you should have done this one, you should have done that one. So what I'm going to say is, you've probably heard me say this before if you're a regular to the channel, and I apologize if that's the case. But if you are new to the channel, several months ago, I put out within Pursuit of Perfect Systems community that I was going to consider doing this group test. And I asked everybody to recommend speakers that they would like to see included in a group test for speakers at the price point, obviously stand mount speakers. And loads, absolutely loads, were suggested and recommended, which was perfect for me because it saved me doing loads of research. So from there, I contacted all of those manufacturers and more to try and hopefully get maybe 5 or 6 different speakers to do a group test. And in the end, obviously, I ended up with 10, as you saw, which actually is a fantastic number. But there was lots of companies that I contacted. Some of them didn't come back. Some of them said no. And some of them kind of discussed it with me a little bit, but just felt it kind of wasn't the right time. So, I mean, for example, Tecton speakers, I contacted them because someone asked me to include their speakers, and they just flat out said no, not interested, which is a little bit insulting, but it's just the way it goes. And then companies like Bowers, Focal and ELAC, I had discussions with them, but I think they decided through different reasons, and for different reasons, it was probably not the right time to include their speakers. I can't really say any more than that. And obviously ELAC was an interesting one because, bearing in mind, I organised this months ago with their new unified reference speakers that have just come out, which seem really interesting. They've had a lot of, YouTube hype from certain channels, and it'd be nice to look at those speakers for sure. But obviously 4 months ago, or whenever it was I was organising this, that wasn't a product that was out in the wild, so to speak. So they couldn't really commit to something when really I couldn't even give them an exact time frame. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because things are not always kind of black and white. It's not always, I've not included some speakers, or I've cherry picked some or the others. I tried to get literally as many together as I could to try and make the group test as useful as possible, and to try and cover as many bases as possible. And 10 bases is a lot. Please don't take that away from me. That was a great number to get involved, but I think it was probably unrealistic to expect to get all of the speakers that exist in that kind of price point and in that category, which is why I named that video 10 of the best, because it's not the 10 best, but I do think it's 10 of the best speakers that you can buy at that price point. And I was able to get some really cracking sound out of all of those speakers. If you watch the sound demonstration videos, I think you'd be hard pressed to be disappointed in any of the sound that I was getting from any of those speakers. Yes, it might not tick all of your boxes for all of your priorities, which was a big part of the video, which we'll come on to next, but it's really hard to be very disappointed with the overall sound quality I was getting from all of those speakers. Just seeing who's joining us. Hello Jeff, hello Hardeep, hello Aaron, hello Peter, hello Della, I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Hi Ryan, Wriggleswade, Sam, Dave, Artificial Intelligence. You can't be a real person with that name. And Eric and a few other guys. So again, thank you very much for joining us live. And I forgot to say, how are we doing for sound? Is the sound okay? Because obviously I can't monitor myself and kind of speak. It just doesn't work. So if there's any problems with the sound, please do let me know. And yeah, 10 speakers were a handful. I'll talk more about that in a second. But just quickly back to the point I was just discussing there. One thing I should have mentioned is that, I should say a huge thank you to all of the manufacturers and distributors that sent me these speakers for this group test. Because for starters, they sent them to me when I suppose they could be elsewhere doing things for them, so that was great. And also they sent them to me for a very long period of time. I must have had all of those speakers, and some of them are still here. The Kefs, as you can see behind me, they're still here. I've had them for the best part of 3 months, so that's a really long time to have a review product in. And that's obviously part of the group test. It takes a long time to review each speaker properly, to give each speaker its time in the limelight. So it was like kind of one a week period of time. So huge thank you to all the manufacturers and distributors. And what was great for me was that I got to look at a lot of different, even though the speakers were similar in terms of all two-way really stand mount speakers, there was a lot of similarities in that regard, but there was also a lot of differences. And it was great to see lots of different speakers from different manufacturers all together, all in close succession. So it's much easier to think how one differs from another and look for, I suppose, the little individual things that make these speakers stand out could be the things that you like about them. And I got to listen to and speak to new companies like Dyne Audio, like Neat Acoustics, like Ophidian Audio, like Bucart Audio. So it's fantastic to make contact with these new companies and start doing reviews for their speakers, because these companies have lots of really interesting products that I would love to look at more, love to find out more about these. So hopefully watch this space. I can't say too much at this stage, but watch this space because there could be some really interesting stuff coming soon. So subscribe if you haven't already. There you go, shameless plug. Right, I suppose, thank you, Paya. Thank you very much. We'll talk about that in a second. The big question and the big thing I want to cover in this video, and I was actually expecting to get a lot more backlash than I have, but the fact that there was no winner, there was no best speaker from the group test, that is really what I wanted to discuss more in this video. Because what happened, as I explained earlier, the main video that I created for the conclusion was much longer than 27 minutes. But as you can imagine, lots of YouTube videos, if they get too long, they start to become less popular. And the video has been very popular at this stage, which I really appreciate, because it actually took me about 3 days to put that video together. Believe it or not, I was having all sorts of computer problems rendering the project out. Hours and hours and hours go by, then you'd have a crash. So it took me at least 3 days to get that video out, and all sorts of messing around to put that together. So it's really great. I'm really grateful and really happy that the video's actually doing well. But again, a big part of it was the fact that I expected people to come into it expecting me to declare a winner, a winner of the group test, as I did before. And the fact that I didn't, I did wonder how that would be received and how well that would be received, and whether I would receive quite a lot of backlash. But I thought about it long and hard, and the reason I decided not to go with a winner is for the actual genuine reason that I kind of briefly explained in the video. There was a much longer explanation, which I had to cut out because, as I say, I didn't want to cut out too much information for the individual speakers. So I made the beginning and the end of the video as short as possible to keep the middle as informative as possible. But really, it was the case of, I made the decision, right, how do I define the best? How do you define best in class? That is actually really not easy. When you actually think about it, you've got 10 different speakers, and they're all good in their own right. Some of them stand out in one ways more than others. Some of them are larger, some of them are smaller, some of them are really heavy and they just feel really solid, and some of them are finished, look really beautiful, where the other ones look a little bit more simplistic. But the one that maybe looks a little bit more simplistic sounds most full range, when you've got another one that's got a really fantastic treble, and another one that sounds really open and clear, and then you've got another one that sounds so tonally rich and satisfying, and then you've got another one that gives you this really fantastic bass. And in between all of that, they're also good in other areas. And my problem was, it's like, how do you pick a best in class? Because for me, a best in class can't be my preference. It can't be my preference. It has to be a best in class for a specific reason. And I thought about it and I thought, well, in order for it to be best in class, I got confused by something. In order for one of these speakers to be best in class, well, then it has to stand out from all the other speakers in this group test. And how would it stand out? So it can stand out for one individual thing, greater treble, greater bass. But the problem is, if this one's greater treble and this one's greater bass, how do you pick between them? You can't, can you? So really, to deem one as best in class, I thought, well, it has to be as good as all the others in every single area. So it has to have a treble that's as good as the best treble. It has to have a mid-range that's as good as the best mid-range. It has to have a bass that's as good as the best bass, and a soundstage, and so on. And if I say none of the speakers did that, what's crazy is that makes it sound like none of the speakers were good. It's the complete opposite. It's like they're good in certain ways, but probably none of them are perfect. And what's interesting about that is we can't really expect perfection probably at any price point. But when you think of the hi-fi market, when there's speakers up to £250,000 or £750,000, and are they perfect? Maybe. Then we think, well, these are kind of £1,300 or £800 or £1,000. We can't really expect perfection. So that is kind of where I was at. So I thought it's really not easy to pick best in class because of this reason. So how do I go about this? So that is why I considered going with best value and changing it from best in class to best value from this bunch. And even that really wasn't easy, because how do you deem best value for you? Do you want a really big sound? Do you want a really clear sound? Or do you want a really tonally satisfying sound? Even that was difficult to separate speakers. So for example, separating the LS50 Meta from the Acoustic Energy AE500, I could see audio files going both ways, one of either way there with those two speakers, and they're both the same price, both about the same size, they both look really nice. So it really wasn't that easy. So that is why I gave the majority of the speakers an Essential Audition Award, because that Essential Audition Award is probably a little bit like a highly recommended award from other websites and other publications, but I didn't want to use the same as them, because for me an Essential Audition Award, and I wish I had the words I'd use to describe that, but that award is given to a product for its high performance, because it's high performance, but there's also something about it which is quite unique, which would make auditioning in that product even more essential than usual. So what I'm saying there is, this is a very good product, but it's also quite standout in certain ways, or maybe it's a little bit quirky, or maybe it's just a little bit unique, or maybe there's some certain characteristics about it that you might really like or maybe not like. That's really what that award is intended to cover. So it's really quite broad, but I thought it might be a little bit more specific than just a highly recommended award, which is more just a pat on the back, isn't it, really? So that is why I gave most of the speakers that award. And the only reason I really didn't give it to the Sonos Faber Lumina 1 is purely because the Lumina 2 has just been released, which is only, I think, £200 more, much bigger driver. I'm sure it's got a much bigger cabinet. And then you're probably going to get the Sonos Faber sound, which is very warm and lush and very inviting, but on a bigger scale, which would then probably compete with the other speakers and then would have been worthy of that award. But obviously, again, the Lumina 2 wasn't a product when I organised the group test, so I couldn't include it because it didn't exist back 4 months ago when everything was organised and arranged. And the other thing I wanted to just quickly talk about, I'm just going to grab a quick drink. The other thing I wanted to quickly talk about and have a little bit of a rant about is because you can see a bit of a trend at the moment mostly with YouTube hi-fi reviewers, because I don't think you see it in magazines or on websites as much. But obviously when you put the best or something best in the title of a YouTube video, for some reason that video seems to do much better than if you don't, which is really weird. But I can obviously understand why with psychology and other bits and pieces. So you can be a little bit clickbait with information in titles to try and promote your video. And I can only look at myself. I put a huge amount of work into every single video, presenting, scripting, the presenting, shooting all the B-roll, all the little clips, editing all that together, putting music to it, packaging it all into one thing, uploading it to YouTube, taking photos, doing the artwork, doing all the text that goes with the videos, doing all the tags, doing all the, all the things behind the scenes that nobody really realizes and appreciates, but all the things you have to do. It's a huge amount of work outside of what you kind of see. So whenever you've done that, you obviously want each video to do as well as possible, for obvious reasons and for lots of different reasons. But so when you're putting titles, when you're doing things, sometimes you can find yourself putting the best, and that's happened a lot lately, I think, where this is the best and that is the best. And I've discussed this with other people, and the problem with that is obviously if everything is the best, well then nothing is. So I'm sure the YouTube hi-fi review world will go full circle and that will stop becoming a thing. But the problem with that, the more that's promoted, well then I think the more the expectation is from people watching the videos, well, I'm expecting to be told what's the best here. I want and I expect kind of an easy ride to the end result. So I don't really want to know what the differences between these 10 speakers are, Terry. I just want to know which one the best is so that I can buy. And the problem with that is, and I was thinking about this when I was trying to put this video together, I remember buying lots of what hi-fi best awards, what hi-fi 5-star, these are the best. And I thought about it, and I don't think I own There probably are a couple here, but actually from the ones that I bought when I was a younger audiophile, I don't think I still own any of them. And that's no reflection on what HiFi, or no reflection on the products. It's just obviously what happens, isn't it? But it's not like you can just say, well, this is the best, that's so perfect that I'm going to keep it for my whole entire life. We all know that's just not the case, is it? It's just not true. So I think if something's promoted as the best, unless you can categorically explain why it is the best, i.e., I've looked at all 10 of these things and this one is the best for reason A, for reason B, for reason C, for reason D. If that's not the case, all it really is just kind of a loose opinion. This is the best from my memory, or this is the best that I've seen this year. And there's nothing wrong with that at all, because that is how the reviewer or the person feels. But I think from your point of view as a viewer, and if you're using this information to make buying decisions, we'll just take that information with a little bit of a pinch of salt and do your due diligence and try and listen to the products first if you can. Because that was, again, something that I thought long and hard about. You know, if I declare something as the best in this group test, well, then people might just buy that without listening to the others. And I think in particular from this group test, that would be missing out on some experiences, or missing out on other speakers that might actually suit you better, purely because the diversity was there. And I think looking back to the last group test that I did, the Wharfedale Evo 4.2s, I know a lot of you have bought those speakers. Now, I'm sure not just because of my review and my videos, but I'm sure that has been part of the reasons that you've chosen those speakers. But I'm pretty sure, you know, nobody's felt let down. I don't think anybody would feel let down by those speakers. And there's been quite a lot of comments come through that people think that they would still stand up to the speakers in this current group test. And maybe in some ways, but definitely not in others. So it's not as simple as that. Really not as simple. Yeah, definitely not. So I've just lost my train of thought there. Yeah, so I think really what I was just trying to say is, you know, always keep the brain engaged. Try and kind of look through the hype and the it's great to be hyped. I've said this before. It's fantastic that, excuse me, fantastic that people are getting hyped and buzzy about new HiFi products. You know, it can be a very kind of old man mentality industry, really. Why? We should be excited about new products. We should be excited about new things. We should be excited to try and find new experiences. So I'm definitely up for that. But when it comes to actually, you know, investing hard-earned money, my advice is always take your time. Try and read between the lines. Try and get as much information as you can. Try and listen, obviously, if you can. You know, listen at home as well. Listen in your own room acoustics. That really is a big one. And that's obviously why I try and put up the in-room frequency responses to show the people that know what they're looking at how my room behaves. You can see consistencies in how my room behaves, and if my room behaves bad in certain areas, well, then hopefully you can realize that most rooms are behaving bad in certain areas, which is why it's encouraged. I encourage people to look at options like your direct lives or like your acoustic treatments, because we're all listening in these less than optimal rooms, and we have to try and obviously work around them. But I don't want to talk about that too much in this video. I'm going to come back through the comment section in a minute. I just want to kind of work through everything that I've kind of planned. But one thing I definitely wanted to say was there's been a huge amount of positive comments left from the conclusion video from the group test. And I just want to say a thank you. Some of them have been really, really nice and very praiseworthy for me, which is, you know, lovely. You know, sometimes, you know, you create videos that are a little bit controversial and you're on the end of, you know, quite a lot of negative comments. And, you know, my skin's got thicker and thicker, I think, the more I've done this as a job and more I've made videos that I've made. But it's very nice and very rewarding to, you know, have positive praise come back and for people to appreciate, you know, the work you're putting in, everything that you've done. So for everybody that left me a positive praise or comment, sorry, thank you very much. And a similar thing, again, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the thumbs up button. And if you're not really sure about it, you can hit the dislike button twice, and you and that works just as well. Right then, one of the things that I wanted to talk about is, I think, the challenge of doing a group test. Now, it is a challenging thing. It's a really challenging thing, especially for 10 speakers. And I was okay with the first 5. Totally fine with the first 5, because 5 in succession, in a way, they all were similar but different. So identifying differences between the 5 was fine, because they was all, I feel like, trying to achieve the same goal but going about it in different ways. So that was fine. And then in the middle of the group test, there was a few speakers in there that were a little bit curveball. And they wasn't really massive curveballs, they just were a little bit different. So we started to look at kind of smaller speakers, and some of the challenges or the limitations of the smaller speaker were coming through. And it was interesting to see how the manufacturers were trying to get around that. But it was also interesting to listen to smaller speakers, because I don't have a huge listening room. You've seen it enough, hopefully, if you've watched the channel. It's really not massive. And obviously smaller speakers can have some benefit in terms of creating more space in a soundstage, I think, because maybe the scale of sound they're creating is not as massive. So, it's all well and good having a huge sound being created by speakers, but if your room's not that big to absorb it or take it, well, then there can't be that much space for a soundstage to form. So that was really interesting. And as I worked through, I started to work back towards a kind of a more mainstream approach. I think with the SVS Ultras, that was an interesting one. And then the Dynaudio at the end. And then what I did was, for one day, I got all the speakers out, and I spent the whole day just listening to all of them again. And why that was so challenging is because I had to try and keep it as close together as possible, to try and keep the time difference between changing speaker A to speaker B to speaker C as minimal as possible. But the challenge of that is setting up the speaker as optimally. So obviously there was no direct live calibrations, so I couldn't do that. I literally just had to put the speaker down in about the best position that I could quickly, listen through a few songs, and then turn everything off, obviously change the speaker to the next one. And by the time you're getting to 6 or 7 of that, it is very tough trying to remember everything that's happened, everything that's going on, how they all work. So for, for anybody that thinks this is like an easy thing to do, to compare 10 different similar-ish kind of speakers, it really isn't. It really is a challenge trying to remember everything. Even even when you've got like a very focused mindset, this is all I'm doing today, it's really quite a challenge. But what is interesting when you do something like that is that there are kind of lasting memories. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because if you went to a hi-fi store to listen, or a hi-fi dealers to listen to several speakers, you would have the exact same challenge, wouldn't you? You'd listen to one for a bit, and then you'd listen to another for a bit maybe, and then you'd bring another one in, maybe with the time in between. And I'm sure you've all had this experience where you just have a lasting memory. So you'll listen to one speaker and there'll just be a lasting memory about it. Oh, I really like the treble, or I just really like the tonality from it, and that was, I took quite a lot actually from that day in terms of what speaker had the most lasting memory on me, and how, which one stood out from that one whole day. So that wasn't a perfect day of testing or listening, but it was an interesting one, because it was very much like going into a hi-fi dealers and having a demo, wasn't it, really? So I enjoyed that, really enjoyed that. I think one other thing I'd like to discuss before I have a look through the comments section, and hopefully there's some interesting questions in there, is that someone left a comment that why are not more YouTube reviewers reviewing things in what they called a more real-world situation? And their real-world situation was having speakers up on some kind of furniture, maybe like a TV rack or a piece of furniture, I assume at the front of the room, with speakers sat on top of that, rather than speakers sat on top of maybe stands like I do in my room, or maybe other people do in their rooms. Maybe Ron, a New Record Day, it's always got loads of space, hasn't he, Ron? Lucky Ron, with the huge room. So that's obviously very different to having speakers sat on top of, some kind of TV rack or furniture rack. And I was thinking about that. I was thinking, how do you do that if you haven't got that situation? How do you do it? And I wouldn't be able to put that in, take it out, put it in, take it out, just to do reviews. So what I thought I would kind of, I suppose, say is that the speaker will behave the same. The speaker, obviously you've got the difference between sitting on axis and off axis. And that is something that everybody is going to experience with all speakers. But if you put the speaker on top of a piece of furniture, obviously it's going to behave the same. It's going to behave exactly the same as if it was coming off of speaker stands. So I actually think that the person in that situation, or anybody who's in that situation, can take pretty much the same information away from the review as someone who might be using the speakers on stands or something else. But what they might want to take into account is just isolation. So maybe something like the products from ISO Acoustics, or there are other products out there where you can isolate the speaker from from the furniture. Obviously create a little bit of separation, but just isolate the vibration and stuff through. And essentially you've kind of created your own hi-fi stand, haven't you? You've created something similar, but you do have the, I suppose, the issue of the height difference. So in that instance, you might be better off going with a speaker that I suppose has a very wide dispersion, that's designed for more even sound dispersion. And yeah, trying to make recommendations on that is really not easy. But when you're doing your research, I would say just try and concentrate on those two things, and definitely look to invest in a product that would isolate the speaker from the furniture. So we're going to come back to some questions in a second. I also just want to quickly talk about the HiFi system that I used for this group test, because again, people have asked me, and what I decided to do is, again, to keep the video descriptions not ridiculously long. If you go into any of the sound demonstration videos, of which there are 5, where I've compared obviously 2 speakers in each, if you look in the video descriptions for any of those videos, the whole HiFi system is all listed in there. And again, I want to say a huge thank you to a few companies for kind of leaving kit with me here long enough in order to do this. So the first one is Lima Acoustics. I'm really glad to hang on to the Tucana 2 anniversary amplifier, because that's a very high quality amplifier with a lot of power, a lot of clean power, and a very neutral sound. So while it might not be everybody's perfect choice for system matching, synergy and all that for every pair of speakers, from a review point of view, I felt like it wouldn't colour the sound in any way. It would be more than good enough, with more than enough power to drive all of these speakers. And I've got to say a huge thank you to them for letting me kind of hang on to it for a long period of time. And I'm actually hanging on to it a little bit longer so I can use it for the other speakers I'm going to be looking at soon. So I'm really grateful for that. And obviously I need to say a huge thank you to Hibiki, which is a company that manufacturing the DAC that I was using for the whole group test, the STS DAC. I need to look this up. It's a really unusual DAC design, but boy, it sounds absolutely fantastic. And I need to do some comparisons with some other DACs before I can do the review. And I've got them here now, which is perfect, but I've really been enjoying it. And that, combined with the Quad Electronics Hugo M scaler, has been giving me a bit of the best of both worlds of the R2R DAC flow and smoothness. And kind of, this is the only way I can describe versus the ladder DACs. They just have this lovely flow about them, but with the kind of sharp, precise, great timing that the Hugo M scaler brings to the party. That's been really impressive to listen to. And I've actually got some other speakers here that are a bit more high end that I'm looking forward to having a play around with this setup to really see what it's capable of. But again, huge thank you to them for letting me have the DAC for a really long period of time in order to do the review. And I've also a huge thank you to Isotech Systems, because I've had an Evo 3 Titan here for ages, absolutely ages, and I need to do the review of that as well. But it's one of those products, you just put it in the system, it's so good, and once you've plumbed all your power cables and everything in, it's like, oh, the last thing I want to do is pull that out to just because I just really like it. It's just in there, it's doing a perfect job. But that will have to come soon, so that will all be obviously coming soon review wise, all of those. And there are other things as well, other speakers here, lots of interesting bits as well, so that's all good. And I suppose just quickly, yeah, there are some more high value speakers here at the moment that I'm going to be looking at, which I'm really excited to. One hopefully is coming, which I'm really excited about, but I can't say anything on that one just yet, but I'm really excited by that. There is the Sonos Faber Seneto 2, I think it is, here. I've got them to review. I've got the Neat Acoustics Ministra speakers to review, the Arendelle 1723 speakers to review, huge, great big stand mount speakers. Really looking forward to listening to them, actually. I can't wait to get them out. What else have we got here? The SA Legend 5.2, I think it is. So that's another really nice one. I'm really looking forward to listening to them. So yeah, these are all coming soon. And the whole purpose of this was just to look at a few other speakers that are a bit more money. So we've looked at 10 up to a certain price point. What happens if you spend a bit more? Do we start to get more of things, or do we get just more of the same? Is it just a bigger scale version, or do we start to add other things like more space, maybe more tonality, more soundstage, and all of those things? And obviously I've got the Dynaudio Evoke 20 to look at as well, and I'm really excited by that because I really like the Evoke 10. Listening to the Evoke 10, ticking a lot of the right boxes for me, because a big full bass, which is what I really like, but they've got a little bit of a quirky design. I think to achieve that sound from the Evoke 10, which is a very compact stand mount speaker, it seems to have quite a unique design, and I'm wondering whether the Evoke 20, because it's a larger speaker, will have all of what's great about the Evoke 10 plus a bit more. Really excited to listen to them, because that could tick, a lot of my personal boxes. Could be a really, really interesting speaker there. So I'm just going to have a quick flick through and a quick flick back through all the comments. So bear with me 2 seconds. Yeah, well, obviously someone's just put they don't see the Wharfedale Evo 4.2 in the thumbnail. You know what? I was tempted on that day that I listened to all 10 of those speakers. I bought the Wharfedale, so I've got them here, the Evo 4.2. Exactly for this reason, to be able to pull them out and do comparisons with them. But once I'd got through about 7 out of the 10 speakers, it's like this, adding an 11th one wasn't really going to bring any benefit. It wasn't at all. So I could have given you an impression of how the Wharfedale Evo 4.2 sound compared to the others, but it wouldn't have been a fair type of assessment. A fair assessment would have had to have been getting the Wharfedale set up properly, running calibration again, squeezing as much sound out of them as possible. And one thing I think to maybe throw out there is that the speaker that probably reminded me the most of the Evo 4.2 was probably the Dynaudio Evoke 10, because it's got that big, lush, warm mid-range. But obviously the Evoke 10 is twice the price, give or take, of the Evo 4.2. But the dynamics of sound from the Evoke 10, the way the sound was presented, the kind of punchy bass, there was a lot of things there that I don't remember getting from the Evo 4.2. So if you like the Evo 4.2, maybe you want to try a speaker that can give you a bit more in terms of dynamics, a little bit more in terms of definitely bass and a few other things. The Evoke 10 might be a nice speaker to try and listen to see whether obviously the money's justified, and to see whether that would be a step on, because I feel like I was working the Evo 4.2 much harder to achieve something like what the Evoke 10 was giving me more naturally, and there is something in that, I think. But again, that's not taking anything away from the Evo 4.2. Great value for money. That just might be the next step on for someone to consider. Similarly, if you've got the 4.2 and you want something that's a bit more neutral sounding, that's a bit more kind of sparkly in the treble, well, that's where the Bucarp S300 Mark II can come in. That can give you even more bass, more extended bass, from not that much larger in terms of a stand mount speaker, but that would give you a more neutral overall tonality. So that could be one to consider. Obviously the Acoustic Energy AE500 would do the same thing as well, be a bit more lively up top. So why, so you should be able to get more in quite a few different areas, and then that speaker also then hits on that new priority for you as well. Hopefully I've explained that okay. So I'm just trying to read through the comments as best I can, as quick as I can. This DMU girl, 2008. She's basically put that she's looking to buy her first system, so she's finding my videos really interesting. I was thinking about this. I see that John Darko's just put out building your first HiFi system video, and I was trying to think whether I should try and make a video like that, but sometimes you feel so far removed from that kind of first stage. It feels like such a long time ago. Obviously my priorities are different now. The way I see things is completely different now. So if I tried to create a video like that, I wondered whether it would just be too much information overload, whether I'll be able to simplify it enough to make it really, really simple, because it was so difficult now to think about it with kind of more simple eyes, if that makes sense. And I don't mean that derogatory in any way. It's like, well, let's build in DSP, let's build in room acoustics, let's build in all these things that have become so important to me as an audiophile. Yeah, but anyway, so glad the videos are being really helpful. Some of the speakers in this group test, some of the speakers in the last group test, I think would be fantastic. You know, starter speakers, fantastic. Especially the ones that are general all-round speakers. I know a lot of people really like the KEF LS50 Meta that are there. They're a really good speaker, but they're a speaker that I think are going to work you as an audiophile. They're going to work you, to set them up really well. Yeah, they'll sound good, but to get out of them what they can deliver, I think you're going to work hard as an audiophile, work hard on the system, work hard on your setup of them. And that's not meant derogatory, or in a demeaning way. It's like that's a really clear speaker with a really low distortion. So it's impossible for it to not be a very low distortion speaker and not be very honest and transparent to the hi-fi system that you feed into it. It's just common logic, isn't it? It's common sense. So it's naturally going to be a little bit more fussy of the kit that you feed into it, which might or might not be a good thing as a new starter. I feel like as a new starter as a hi-fi, you just want a speaker that's a good all-rounder, that's going to put a smile on your face, that's going to be kind of easier on you as an audiophile, because really, and I remember going through the mill as an audiophile. Wow, why is it not sounding better? What am I doing wrong? What am I piecing together wrong? It's probably just I was buying equipment that was beyond my means as an audiophile, thinking if I buy really expensive speakers and I'm using it with an AV receiver, like not a very good AV receiver, and I'm wondering why I'm not getting amazing sound, it's because I was just making mistakes. So sometimes it's good to just buy the right products. You don't have to go crazy, just buy the right quality products as a starting point. Learn, because we're always learning, aren't we? And then maybe build things up from there. But if you start off in a good place, you start off in a place that you really enjoy listening to music and listen to a lot of different music, I think is the important part. Well, then that's going to make the hobby, I think, stick with you more. Whereas if you listen to, or if you put a system together, maybe sounds fantastic for one album and terrible for everything else, you're going to be pretty upset with that system real quick. So that's just my advice maybe for a new starter. Great question. Does more money equal better sound? I think I answered this in the last live stream. Does more money equal better sound? And they've put the Marty and Parker Duo speakers. So those are around £11,000 stand mount speakers from memory. And if I had the graphs up here, I could show you. So the best of this group test from a frequency response measurement was the SVS Ultra in terms of kind of measuring the most neutral and the most extended in the treble, and they measured extremely flat. And obviously they sounded a certain way as the result of it. Whereas the Martin Parker Duo measured better than the SVS speakers, and they still sounded better than kind of the nicest sounding speaker in this current group test. So you're getting a very neutral sound out of them as a speaker. They're delivering pretty much everywhere you want it, mid-range, bass and treble. But they also sound massively pleasing, massively tonally satisfying, with a huge bass that's really tight and articulate. From a reasonable size, quite a large actual stand mount speaker. So they are pretty much doing everything that you could want, or everything that I could want anyway. They was doing pretty much everything you could want. But the price is kind of £11,000, and they can do it all. But to get that out of them, I had a very good hi-fi system. I had to work a little bit hard on setting them up. So I've always said more money probably buys you more potential. It should just buy you instantly better sound. Sound is just one of those things. It's just because we're listening in challenging environments, difficult rooms. Spending more money should give you better sound, and I think it definitely does. But I also think it gives you much more potential, and then it's up to the audiophile to unlock that potential from the system. And I don't just mean spending money. It can just be setting things up in a room. It can be, all acoustics. The foundation of a system. It can be so many things to unlock sound. So I've spent money before, and it's felt like a sideways move, and I've actually spent money before and it's felt like a backwards move. But I thought about it and I thought, well, this shouldn't be a sideways move or a backwards move. There must be something else that I'm doing wrong in order for me to experience this. So what the better product has done has just opened my eyes, or maybe more clearly be able to hear other things that are not working as well, or things that I've got wrong that was maybe being masked over before by the product or the component that wasn't quite as good or wasn't quite as clear. And I've experienced that quite a lot. I've experienced that quite a lot within building a computer for a music source as a music transport. I've experienced it a lot with that and different things that I've done there, but I've experienced it in other places too. So does more money buy better sound? Yes. Better potential, much more potential, I think, is where it's at, and other benefits as well. And hello everybody's coming in from the USA and stuff like that. Yeah, Jeff Warford, obviously he's new to the hobby. He's got his eye on the Acoustic Energy AU500s. If you're new to the hobby, that's an ideal speaker. That's an ideal speaker to get you going because it's good in tonality. You're getting good bass out of that. It's got quite a lively sound as well, so it'll keep you on your toes. You know, music won't be too forced asleep with them, which is nice. And they're built lovely. They're really solid and heavy. They feel substantial. They feel quality in your hands. I really like them, actually. I really like those speakers. So that would be a great place to start. Obviously, my advice would be, if you can, listen to a couple. That's always the best advice, but you can't really go wrong with them. So, obviously, Mark Elliott. Obviously, a few people have mentioned this. So the Kef R3s. Originally, I did ask Kef to send me the LS50 Meta and the R3s, the reference threes, not the reference threes, sorry, the R3, because they are a three-way stand mount speaker for £1,300. So they would have been really nice one to include because they are three-way and not two-way. But obviously, Kef arranged to send me the LS50 Meta, so it couldn't look a gift horse in the mouth. I said, yes, please, I'll take those for a review. So yeah, that would have obviously been an interesting one to look at as well. I've listened to them a bit at shows, and I've listened to them here and there. Obviously, I've owned reference myself. I know Kef speakers really well, and I feel like the R3s would have been very good in some areas, but there would have been a few areas where they might not have been as good as the LS50 Meta, for example, maybe in terms of outright resolution and clarity, because of the benefits of the Meta material and how low distortion they are. So it probably would have been a case with the R3s that, yeah, they're great in certain areas, but they still come up a little bit short compared to some of the other speakers here. So I think that probably would be the case with a lot of the other speakers out there, like the Focal 906, is it? Aria 906, I would have really liked to have listened to those. And a few of the others, like the Bowers & Wilkins and stuff. Obviously, having reviewed the 606 recently, I'm sure the S2 is a more refined version of the 606, and that's a nice speaker. But it would have been, you know, the Bowers & Wilkins sound is quite a unique one. And it's, you know, some people really like it, some people don't like it. So it's back in that same category. It's good in certain areas. It gives you a lot for the price, but, you know, will it do enough to stand out amongst all the others to be classed as the best in class? It's a real tough one, isn't it? It's got some real strong speakers here. When you're looking at the likes of, you know, the ATC SCM11, the mid-range out of them is really something, and the treble out of them is really something, and the Dynaudio Vogue 10, the bass out of them is really something. It's like, wow. For a speaker to be best in class, to be as good as all of those, you know, and then the openness of the Ophidian Mojo 2, that's a challenge to put something together that can really do that. For the price point as well, for the price point. Someone's asked about Dali. I really like Dali speakers. I tried to contact Dali to include some in the group test. Unfortunately, they didn't come back to me. I don't have the contacts over there at the moment, which is a shame because Dali make a lot of things in-house. They make their own drivers in-house. I've got to listen to some of their Epicon speakers on a few occasions, and they're really nice speakers. So it would have been great to include Dali. Unfortunately, it just didn't happen. But as I say, once I got to 10 speakers, I kind of stopped asking because I realised that was going to be, you know, a mammoth task on its own. Let me just quickly get a drink. Yeah, someone's asked about Martin Logan motions. Yeah, that would have been... You know what? Again, because I put out the thing through my community, what speakers you want me to include. Obviously, if I do another one, I'll do the same thing. You know, I was thinking maybe an amplifier one might be interesting, you know, which is, you know, an amplifier maybe up to £2,000 or something like that would be interesting. Let me know if that's of interest. Personally, I really want to start looking at some tube products. I've just got a, you know, that feels like a whole part or side of the industry I know so little about, and so kind of feel so inexperienced with all these different tube amplifiers, and that means high efficiency speakers, which again I've got such a small, you know, element of experience with. So that's personally what I'm interested to look at. But, you know, I'm here to service you as well. So if there's things you're interested to see, make sure you let me know, and obviously I'll do my best to ignore you and do what I want to do. Well, look, kind of Neil. That's kind of Neil Paisley's put. The best speaker is the one that each individual prefers, which is kind of what it is. And some people have left some comments that have been very promotional about the speakers that they own. And in a way, that's fantastic because people are creating an emotional attachment to the products that they buy, or, you know, the speakers that they own, or other hi-fi components. And I think if you're making an emotional attachment to a hi-fi component, you really love it, and it means it's doing a great job for you. But it's my job to try and take that away, take away my own personal preferences to a point. Obviously, otherwise, well, it could be a robot, but just to try and be as impartial as possible, which is why I do the sound demos, because it keeps me honest. Hopefully, everything I say in a review you hear in a sound demo. I pride myself on that. And it also gives you a chance to disagree with me and a chance to hear things maybe I'm not hearing, or make your own mind up on things. And they seem to be getting more and more popular as people watch them. I feel like I'm getting better at doing it. I've improved my recording techniques. I've improved lots of things with regards to that. And I invested a huge amount of money probably a year ago in some really nice equipment, really nice. So I feel like since I've done that, the quality of what I'm doing has got so much better that hopefully they're more useful. That's what I'm trying to say. Everyone wants to talk about the Wharfedale Evo 4.2s. That was last time. We want to talk about these speakers. Let's talk about these speakers. The best of tools. Terry's the kind of guy you just want to grab a pint of beer in a pub and chat with for hours. Probably would be for hours as well. I never shut up. So yes, as long as you're buying the beers, I'm more than happy to do that with you. Sorry, just bear with me. I'm just looking through. So someone's asked the question, did I like the Evoke 10 the most? Yes, maybe, and no. When I put them on, I just listened to them, and I just listened to them, and I just listened to them. And I really, really enjoyed listening to them, but they were suiting the music that I was listening to at that particular time. And then which is just my guilty pleasure music, some psytrance, like lively, pumping dance, trance music, which occasionally I put on just because I want to smile, I want to, kind of let my hair down and just have some fun. And after that, obviously, I run a Dirac Live calibration, looked at how they measured, which showed me a few things that I couldn't hear with that style of music because it just wasn't that style of music to show me. And then I went through the usual playlist of all the songs that I would normally listen to, with a few new ones always added. And then I did the recordings, obviously, for them, listening to the classical music and stuff. And in doing that, that's when I could hear some of the things about them where they wasn't as strong as some of the other speakers here. So... And again, that makes me sound like I'm talking down on that speaker. It's definitely not. And it's only if you're listening side by side you may even notice. But again, it just suits a certain person. So if you like a lot of classical music, then you might prefer, I think, maybe a different speaker that's a bit more high frequency attacking, because sometimes those big crescendos, it's all about intensity for those. And that's where the Evoke 10 wasn't as good as some of the other speakers. And I think rock music, like gritty teeth type of rock music, they was a little bit softer in terms of delivering that intensity than some of the other speakers are, and obviously a few other things. But no, I really did like the Evoke 10. That was just, a really fun speaker, which is why I'm really excited to look at the 20, bigger speaker, slightly different design, different crossover point. Really, really interested to listen to those. Sorry, let me just read this question from Zen Boy. So, Terry, hi Terry, I don't have a lot of wiggle room for speaker placement. Join the club. About 1.5 feet from the front wall. That is pretty close. And about 5 to 6 feet apart, which would be the best for imaging. I assume you've got a smaller room, if that's the case. If you've got a smaller room and you're big on imaging, then you're possibly looking at the Ophidian Mojo 2. That's what they're really good at. Creating a slightly more delicate overall presentation. But you feel like they disappear more. And you feel like a lot of the other speakers sounded much more direct. So you put a lot of the other speakers on, you listen to them, and the sound comes direct. And a lot of them are similar in that regard. Whereas the Mojo 2 sounded really quite different, really quite unique. There was a little bit of a trade-off in the frequency response in the vocals for that, which you may or may not notice. But they are very open sounding. And then you've got the really precise treble, which is a little bit extended at the top, which is what I think gives them this sense of space, because it's a little bit lively in the treble, in the region that will give you kind of air. I think that's kind of how they are designed. That makes them a little bit unique. But then if that treble is maybe a bit stronger, then maybe the Neat Acoustics SX3, which is again a smaller speaker, creates a very, again, you can see it in the frequency response, the old BBC dip, that I think helps the speaker to just relax its presentation a little bit compared to the very direct, more flat frequency response speakers like your ATC, like your Amphiums, and like your SVS. So there are some technical differences correlating to what you hear. So maybe those, but it would purely depend on, obviously, on the size of the room, which is difficult. Obviously, the LS50 Metas are also very good, very, very good at that. That's part of what they're all about as well. So you've got a few different options there, I think, to consider. Your biggest problem when you put speakers that close to boundaries is going to be your bass reinforcement, which actually can be a positive thing with a smaller speaker, which is why a lot of the time you'll see me use, well, I use all the speakers like it because I'm limited on space, but especially the smaller stand mount speakers, I room load them to try and get as much bass out of them as possible, and then I manage that bass with Direct Live. It's all done on purpose. It's all done purely for specific reasons. Use the room to give me as much bass as possible, then I manage the sound from there. There's all different ways to skin a cat. That is the best way in my room to achieve, I feel like, the best sound overall. And if you're kind of in a similar situation to me, then that might be a good approach to take into account, or maybe look at as well. Yeah, someone's put Dave Horwell, the R3, the Monitor Audio Studio. He demoed both and chose the studios. Yesterday, I was doing a calibration, Direct Live calibration for a customer, and he had Monitor Audio Studio speakers. You can see at my Facebook a picture, very, very wide apart, really wide apart. And he had a Mission subwoofer. Never seen a Mission subwoofer before, a dual opposed one. And he's had it for 10 years. So I think it was from the Mission before they became part of IAG. And I was really impressed by those studio speakers, actually. Really impressed by them. Nice sound. A little bit different from Monitor Audio speakers to some of the others. It was a bit more mellow sounding rather than precise. Ribbon tweeter, maybe that's why. But what I found with those, and this might be of use to you, when I integrated the subwoofer, and it took me a long time to get it just right. When I integrated the subwoofer with those studio speakers, their whole sound just grew up, got much, much bigger, much more substantial, and they just sounded much more effortless as well. So that was running off of an Arcam AVR 550 AV receiver, and yeah, I did a really good calibration there, and they were sounding absolutely fantastic, but very big in scale, which for a tiny little studio speaker, it's about that big, isn't it, in terms of a monitor speaker, to get a big scale sound like that was all down to the correct integration of the subwoofer. So there's a little hint for you, or a little tip. You might be doing that already, but interesting. I own some PMC 24 speakers, and I have a love-hate relationship with them. I don't know what to say about that. What do you want me to say about that? Try and love them some more, maybe. I don't know what to say. That's quite a funny one. That's why I threw that in. Don't ask me that. If one of these, speaker manufacturers were to gift you a pair, which ones would it be? Well, I think hopefully I answered that with the very end, and I put it at the very end on purpose because, the LS50 Metas would be great for review tools. I've just done when was it? I think last week. I just did a set of sound recordings between two things. It's going to cause some controversy. These videos always do, but I'm going to put it out there because I want to. And they was really, really good at telling me the differences between two quite simple things, and yet the difference in sound is absolutely massive. So that's probably going to come next Sunday, that video. There'll be some hate off the back of it. But so yeah, for work, the Evoke 10 for fun, as I mentioned. But I did like the Amphia Margon one. I was really enjoying listening to them as well. So it's not easy, really not easy. I think I've pretty much caught up on everything. So while I don't always agree with you, Terry, I usually do. I'm glad you got that in there. So this is Dutch Meister 1911. You're still one of the most interesting and honest. You know what? I'm as honest as it gets. When people meet me in real life, when I do calibrations, this is just me. This is not an act for the camera. This is just me. I'm exactly the same. So yeah, totally honest. And I never encourage people to spend money. You should spend money on the HiFi because you love it, but I never tell people buy anything. Never buy anything. I don't encourage you to buy stuff. You buy what suits you. You buy what works for you. But you should try stuff. Try as much stuff as you can. Don't be put off certain things by other people. Try them for yourself because you just should just try as much as you can. That's quite an interesting one that's just come in. An infinitely huge attempt to achieve audio perfection would at best only produce a system that was infinitesimally close to perfection, but still not perfect. That's a really interesting one. There was a fantastic comment left, I think it was today, by a chap who said that a way to be better at reviewing would be to reference against things like Steinway pianos. You know, how close does a speaker get you to the sound of a live or a real Steinway piano? And I've got to hold my hands up. I wish I had the experience, you know, of listening to a real live Steinway piano. But the problem you have there is, even if you'd heard it for real in a room, that's not what we're hearing in hi-fi, is it? We're listening to recorded audio. So really all we're going to get is the version of that sound that's been recorded and the version of that sound that's been mastered and engineered and tweaked. And then we're just trying to recreate that at home. And I think that is recreate is probably a big part of hi-fi, because, or create probably is a difference. So we're all trying to create a sound. I suppose everybody wants a realistic sound or an honest sound, but no one really knows what that is. So essentially we're just trying to create our own sound, and it's really quite a contradiction, isn't it, when you think about it, that hi-fi is supposed to be, you know, like a perfect recreation of what the source material is. Yet we're all doing it differently. Everybody likes something different, which means we're all creating our own version or creating our own sound. So hi-fi is not really recreation, it's actually creation. So I think that's really quite an interesting contradiction in itself. This has been an hour. It's been really interesting. You know, I'm just trying to see if there's any more. Why do other reviewers negate sound demos? That's a really interesting question. Right. I don't know if people know, but the sound demos that I create, you don't make, as a YouTube reviewer, or when you make videos on YouTube, you get paid a little bit of money per the ads. Everybody knows that's the case. But with a sound demo, if you use music that is copyright owned by someone else, all the money that's made from that video goes to the copyright owners. So for every sound demo video I have ever created, of which I've created hundreds, all the show videos where there's music in them, all that work is unpaid. So that's a lot of work. It's a hell of a lot of work. So I don't blame reviewers for not doing all this work for free, because essentially that's what I do all the time. And you know, maybe some people don't believe in it, and I still have, less nowadays, but I still have comments coming through, people being sarcastic. You know, I just listened to this on my 0.5 centimeter phone speaker. What a ridiculous video. And what's ridiculous about that comment is, would you ever listen to any audio seriously through your phone speaker? You may listen to it, but would you ever listen to that seriously and think you can get anything from that? Well, you wouldn't, would you? So why is one of my YouTube videos any different to, you know, music you might listen to? Again, you might listen to it, but you're not going to kind of listen to it and think you're going to get anything out of the production or anything out of the way it's been produced or any of that from a phone speaker. And doing sound recordings of hi-fi systems, and I've argued with some people about this until I'm blue in the face, I don't really see the difference between recording the sound of a hi-fi system to recording the sound of maybe an orchestra or a band. Obviously it's done in a different way, but it's microphones recording sound. And hi-fi systems, yeah, there's room interaction, and yeah, there's all these things going on, but essentially the hi-fi system creates the sound, it plays that sound out into the room, and you can record that sound with stereo microphones or with binaural setups. You can record that sound. And is it the same as the real thing? Of course not. Is it the same or as good as sitting in there listening to it for yourself? Of course not. But whenever is recorded as good as listening to live, just what I've been speaking about before, it isn't. It's always like a slightly diluted version of the same thing. But listening to, you know, a recording of something, you can tell the piano, maybe the piano that's been played, or the drums, on how well they've played it, and whether they're in tune, whether they're out of tune. So you can still get a lot from that recording, even though it's not as good as the real thing. And that was the whole purpose, partly the purpose of doing sound demos in the first place. I actually thought it was the done thing as well. I thought everybody would want that, and now it seems like less people do it than more. And you know, it's also really not easy getting. When you set up a good microphone array to record sound, they are brutally honest. The slightest bit too much bass, the slightest bit here and there, they are brutally honest. And your audiophiles, you're listening to these recordings with critical ears, and it doesn't take much for people to, well, I'm not happy with that, I'm not happy with that, that's not as good. So it's like, it's not easy to do. Trust me, it's really not easy to do. I know some people do it and they do great jobs, but it's really not that easy to do. So, you know, it's a lot of work, potentially for nothing, no reward. So that's possibly why. But they're not doing it. You'd have to ask, you know, others. That's just my kind of my take on it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, appreciate. Yeah, you like the sound demos. Yeah, thank you. You know, I wanted them to be perfect from the start, and they wasn't. and the equipment that I was using wasn't good enough. It boils down to that. The equipment that I was using was actually colouring the recordings. So, some of that was software, some of that was hardware. So, you know, I used to use equipment that cost maybe £500. And now I bought equipment that's in the thousands of pounds. It's like, I'm just going to make this investment once and then use it until it dies on me, because it needed to be better. Because, you know, things that I'm saying in the videos, I want everything to be supported in the sound demos, and therefore it needs to be as clear as possible. And if the equipment's not good enough, then I'm always going to fight that fire, aren't I? So, yeah, James, obviously, when you implement a system using Dirac, how much do you strip out of the character of the speaker being used? Well, interestingly, I've just done 5 videos, sound demonstration videos, comparing speakers. And you can clearly hear the differences in those speakers in all of those videos. Some of it's similar and some of it's not. But you can choose with Dirac. That's why I like it. So you could choose, if you wanted to get the manufacturer's designed in frequency response, and you could put that in to try and as closely match that as possible. And if you had speakers in a room, you would never ever be able to get anywhere close to that, not even close, because the way the room will start making the sound do a lot of this. So you have complete choice to do what you want with it. So you can choose to make it a bit brighter, a bit less bright, a bit more mid-rangey, a bit less mid-rangey. But really the speaker still sounds like the speaker. So when you're working with a digital file, for example, the speaker doesn't know what signal it's getting. So it doesn't know if it's going to get more treble or less treble, or more mid-range or less mid-range. So really the speaker doesn't know what signal it's getting. So it won't change the... Yeah, sorry about that, Spam. I don't know how to stop that. It's obviously not going to change the speaker as such. It's just kind of changing the signal that it's getting. So you're still going to very much hear, very, very much hear the speaker. But you start to hear just less of the room and less of the negative effects of the room. And you have control over it as well. So I'm really sorry about that. That's kind of ruining this video there. I don't know what's happening. I don't know if I can stop it. There we go. Hopefully I can got rid of that. Got rid of that. Sorry, everyone. Sorry about. I don't know why. Of all the you could you. There we go. I've stopped it. Hopefully I've stopped it. I've stopped it. Done my best to stop that. Sorry everybody about that. I've never had that before. So apologies about that. Well, look, unless anybody's got any other questions or anything else. Some comments there. You know, thank you very much thank you to everybody actually who watched the whole review series. 10 long videos. That's a lot of videos, a lot of sound demos. Thank you to everyone who did that. You know, group tests are hard. They take a lot of organising. It's not that easy, but I know they are very useful. So I would like to do more, but it's not something that I can do all the time, because what you don't realise as well is the logistics. Having all those boxes stored, when you want to get that one out, you have to move them all around. And then every video, well, I've got to get all the boxes out, all the speakers out, do all the video, and then put them all back away again. It really is a crazy amount of work. Here we go again. So we'll definitely do some more. I'll definitely do some more. And obviously I've got the, you know, up to 2,000 speakers to look at, which I'm not sure I'm going to group test them. I'll just do them individually, but I will compare them. I'll throw some comparisons in, because again, I think that's useful. And I think the sound demos, I might try and pair them up. If the speakers pair up well, then I'll try and do that for the sound demos to make them a comparison, because again, I think it's just interesting, isn't it, to see that. But because I'm getting spammed, I think it's probably a good time to call it a day. So thank you very much to everyone who's watched this video. Just a bit of a follow-up again from everything that's going on. There's loads more coming, absolutely loads. I've got so much work to get through. I think I age a year every day at the moment with how much I'm trying to do. So thank you very much for watching this one. Sorry about all the spam. And yeah, take care everyone. Thanks for watching. All the best. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.